Well, thank you very much. And we're here to talk about a very important subject, education, but also opening our schools. And we have some of our great teachers and
Tổng thống
parents
Donald Trump và
very
Phó Tổng thống Mike
representative group,
Pence
and we
đang
also have
dự một cái sự kiện
some
liên
extraordinary
quan tới
experts with us. I'd like to maybe start off
việc
by
khuyến khích
asking
trẻ em
the
trở lại
Vice
trường học như
President
thế
to
nào
say a
cho nó
few
an toàn.
words, and then if you would, Betsy and Kellyanne, and we'll go around and talk to
Tham dự thì
some of
cũng
the
có Bộ
parents and
trưởng
teachers.
Y tế
And
bà
thank you all
Betsy,
for being here very much.
cũng như là
Appreciate it.
người cố vấn
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I want
đặc
to
biệt của Tổng thống Donald Trump, bà Kelly.
all of the educators and
Bây giờ thì Phó Tổng thống Mike Pence phát biểu trước.
President Trump made it clear from the time that we made our way through the difficult days of 45 days to slow the spread. The President said we want to work with states to open up America again, but to open up America, we've got to open up America's schools.
Ông đang nói tới việc cái định hướng của Tổng thống Trump ngay từ đầu là làm việc với các tiểu bang để mà mở lại các sinh hoạt của Hoa Kỳ, trong đó có mở lại sinh hoạt của trường học.
Indiana and Louisiana, and we are working literally day in and day out with governors and state education leaders to find a way that we can safely reopen our schools. Our commitment is to make sure that our states and our schools have the best guidance. We'll talk a little bit about that today. CDC actually issued some new guideposts, Mr. President, not long ago, but the first document they issued was the CDC's position that it is best for our kids to be back in school. The CDC recognized that it's a public health priority to have our kids back to school and in-person learning. Mr. President, as you've also made clear, we're going to make sure our schools and our states have the resources to be able to safely reopen, and we're calling on Congress to work with us to appropriate another $105 billion. We believe that we can safely reopen our schools. We know that it's best for our kids.
Chúng tôi tin tưởng rằng chúng ta có thể mở lại trường học một cách an toàn.
But also, we don't want our kids to miss out on the counseling that they receive, special needs services, as well as all the nutrition programs that are available just at our schools. And finally, Mr. President, I know that you've recognized from early on that getting our kids back to school is first a priority for them, but also it's important for working families.
Cho trẻ con là trường học quan trọng không chỉ đối với trẻ con mà là đối với cả những gia đình cần phải đi làm nữa. Do vậy là mở cửa lại đất nước Mỹ thì cũng phải mở cửa lại trường học của nước Mỹ. Tôi cảm ơn ông Tổng thống về cái sự lãnh đạo của ông, như là những người cộng sự ở đây.
Teachers in particular. As you know, I've been married to a school teacher for 35 years. She's preparing to go back to the classroom this fall, and I want to thank all the educators who are here.
Tôi xin cảm ơn tất cả những thầy cô giáo, những nhà giáo dục có mặt ngày hôm nay ở đây.
To get our kids back to school.
Chắc chắn là cuộc họp này thì có rất nhiều những người liên quan tới ngành giáo dục tham dự. Bà Betsy là Bộ trưởng Bộ Giáo dục của Hoa Kỳ.
Getting kids back to school. It's been a privilege to travel with the Vice President to meet with educators, education leaders, and especially with parents and students
Tôi
to
đã đi
hear
với Phó
about
Tổng thống để gặp
what
rất nhiều
their
những
needs
nhà giáo dục
are as
hoặc là
fall
bố
quickly
mẹ của các trẻ
approaches.
con.
And so
Các phụ huynh
I'm just thankful to be here with this group today to listen and learn from you
cảm ơn là
about
tôi
what
được
your needs are
ngồi
as
lắng
we
nghe
anticipate
cái
getting
nhóm
back to
ở
school.
đây.
And
sẽ
Commissioner
chia sẻ.
Corcoran, thank you for your bold leadership in Florida, really setting high expectations for all of the students and educators there. We know that for students and their families, they can't be held captive to other people's fears or agendas. We have got to ensure that families and parents have options that are going to work for their child and for their children's education. And so
các gia đình không
I look
thể
forward
bị
to this
gọi là
conversation
cầm tù ở nhà
as
mãi
to
được,
how
họ
we
phải có
can
cái
ensure that we do not have a one-size-fits-all approach, but that we do
lựa chọn là
ensure
đi
every
quay trở lại
child
trường học,
has
cho
a
con trở lại
chance to
trường
go
học
on
để họ đi làm.
learning full-time this fall.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Secretary DeVos. We're here mainly to hear from each of
Kelly
you today.
là cố vấn đặc biệt
Before I
của
do
Tổng
that, I
thống
just
Trump.
wanted to point out that there is
Bà này là có cái công rất lớn trong cái lần trước năm 2016 đưa ông Trump
over
một trong những người
65% of
trong cái
America's parents are very concerned that their children will fall behind academically and socially if they don't get back to school. Having said that, we recognize that many school districts have already made a decision to either go hybrid or full-time virtual
Chúng tôi cũng
learning
nhận
for
thấy
the
rằng là có
first
nhiều
month or
cái
two, or
học
maybe
khu
longer.
đã
So
quyết định
our goal today,
có
the
quyết định rồi,
President's goal has always been
hoặc
how
là
do
cho
we
quay học trở
reopen
lại, hoặc là có thể
safely?
học
How do we
vừa
reopen
học ở
soon,
nhà vừa
and
học
how
ở
do we
trường.
reopen safely? We also recognize that a number of teachers, particularly the 10% or so that are over the age of 60 in most of our schools, are concerned. So we have given resources and guidance that allows each of those districts to make those decisions, to maybe
Chúng
modify the
tôi
work schedules of the
đã sẵn
teachers and
sàng
other
để
administrative
đưa ra
staff
những
that may
hướng
be
dẫn cũng như là
overall,
những cái resource,
we know that
những
the
cái
risk is low for kids in contracting and being hospitalized, and of course
điều
the
kiện
worst
để
possible
mà
outcome, dying from COVID-19, but the
các
risk is
nhà giáo
very
dục có thể
high
lập
if
những
they're
cái
locked down
quyết định của họ.
indefinitely. Nearly 100% of our 75 million students K through college left their places of learning, left those structures between the first and third weeks of March of this year. And we see that all situations were not created equally. The lack of digital assets was very obvious for many of our students, the lack of nutrition, the lack of social and emotional and mental well-being and development. But also, we heard from many school administrators and teachers, they're concerned because roughly 1 out of 5 child abuse cases are detected in schools. So we have to also think about all that we don't know.
Và nói là về cái vấn đề có những cái vấn đề rất là bất công cho cái chuyện mà khi mà học sinh không đi học. Một trong những cái chuyện bạn mới nói tới là một trong 5 cái trường hợp mà gọi là lạm dụng trẻ con được phát hiện ra là nhờ các trẻ con đi học mới phát hiện được.
And her son Luis is entering a public district school in a public district school, the 9th grade, I believe, freshman year for Luis.
Correct.
If you can tell us a couple of things, Elisa. First of all, what were the relative advantage or disadvantage of him being a bilingual student when you had to go virtual learning? And then we understand that your school district has not yet announced.
Và giới thiệu người này sẽ nói về những cái mà lợi và bất lợi của cái việc mà học
Correct.
qua
Yes,
online.
we as the parents, we had to take a survey regarding either going back to school or going virtual. So at the moment, we, like you had mentioned, we do not have an answer yet. Hopefully we do, and I'm hoping that we do go back.
Họ đã đưa ra một cái thăm dò cho các phụ huynh trả lời là nên đi học lại hay là nên ở nhà học tiếp, thì họ chưa có câu trả lời từ phụ huynh đang đợi.
It was kind of difficult for him because it's really hard being a bilingual and having to learn 2 different languages. And but with the help of teachers and the community, he stood up and did a great job. That was the advantage, that when he needed help, teachers were there to help him and, fulfilled whatever gap, was not being covered. And so he did pretty well after that.
Cô kể chuyện về cái học sinh liên quan tới những học sinh mà không phải là tiếng Anh là cái tiếng chủ yếu của họ đó, cho nên là khi mà đi học được có thầy giáo ở đó thì nó sẽ dễ dàng hơn cho họ.
Dr. Paul Peterson is the director of the program on education policy and governance at Harvard University and Hoover Institution Senior Fellow. Dr. Peterson, we've heard an awful lot, including from the president and the vice president,
về giáo dục sẽ có sự trình bày
about the relative problems that children could face if they are in indefinite lockdown. Would you please expand on that as a doctor?
Well, we know that for every year that you spend in school, in the future, you will earn 10% more in lifetime earnings. So if we lock down schools for a year,
ông nói rằng là theo thống kê thì cho biết rằng là mỗi cái năm mà mình học ở trong trường thì cái lợi tức về sau này khi trưởng thành đó là sẽ tăng 10%. Cho nên khi mà đóng lại như vậy thì nó sẽ ảnh hưởng một cách trực tiếp tới cái vấn đề là thu nhập của những người này về sau.
The most important element in social growth is being with your peers, with your own friends.
Một trong những cái quan trọng khi mà học đó là phải có bạn bè xung quanh.
In a setting where you don't have social relationships, to say nothing of the medical costs of being isolated and not, I remember when I was a child, I had
và cái gọi là
the teacher said, he
sự
can't
tốn
see,
kém về vấn đề y tế rất là cao khi mà
Well, I've got some new eyes now, so I can see. But yeah, you are told in school what the problems are, and then you can get those problems solved. All those things
Tới
are
trường
out
thì mới
the
biết
door
được có
if
những cái
you're
vấn
not
đề
in
để mà
school.
giải
So
quyết và có
sitting
thể giải quyết
in
được.
isolation with a computer, looking at a laptop, is not the same as being out there in the real world.
Tổng thống
You know,
nói
at
rằng
one
là
time,
nhìn qua
Mr.
cái
President, I
computer
thought digital
để làm
learning
lớp
was the
học thì không thể
future,
nào mà có
but we have
cảm
learned
xúc
through
chung
this
là đi học
COVID
một cách trực tiếp
crisis
được.
that we haven't got digital learning to the point where you can really engage young people. They've got to be in that classroom. They
Chúng
have
ta
to
cho
be
tới
with
thời
their
điểm này thì
So if you're
nói là
a
chưa có
presidential candidate and you're
chế
sitting
tới
in a
mức độ mà
basement and you're looking at a
cái
computer,
hệ
that's
thống
not a good
computer
thing.
sẽ hoàn toàn cái việc
Sounds like it would be the same.
Well,
I won't put you on the
I can't
spot. I'm not going to
comment
put you
on
on. Thank you very much. A lot of truth to that.
Hypothetically speaking, yes. I don't know a single parent who thinks their kid needs more screen time, to your point, Dr. Peterson. Lynn Gronseth from Arkansas. You've been a special education teacher. I think you're entering your 19th year, but you also are considered higher risk for contracting
Yes.
the coronavirus since you have asthma. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell us how you feel about going back to school or the
My
students.
son's a physician, and I will say radiologist at Stanford. And so every time there were rumors and myths, I just called him and said, what are you hearing there? And he never once, not once, said, please don't go back. He knows how much I love my special education students, how much they
Câu này là
need those
dạy cho
special
những học sinh
resources
mà
like
có
your
nhu
speech,
cầu
my
đặc
other
biệt,
colleagues
tức là những người mà
provide.
có
The
khiếm khuyết
instruction
về
was extremely difficult
thể lực á.
for my students. A lot wouldn't come to the Zoom meetings. It's just so different. But what I was going to say is I typed the protocols from Springdale Public Schools, and I'm very comfortable with them. They've gone beyond the call of duty. I gave that to my allergist, emailed it to my son, and both of them gave me, with precautions, the ability to go back. And I want to be there for my students and help them navigate through this.
Cô kể rằng là cô cũng rất là muốn ở đó để mà có thể giúp những cái người học sinh khiếm khuyết của cô, khuyết tật của cô.
Thank you. Dr. Melanie McGraw-Piasecki from Charlotte, North Carolina, a neonatologist, but also a mom of 3 who I think has been home with the kids, helping them navigate the online world of learning. Could you tell us, both a mom of 3 who's been home with them, but also through your medical experience, how can we learn to safely and quickly return to school?
Sure. My children, I would say, did not have a great experience in the spring, particularly my youngest, who was in first grade at the time. I think the online learning for the young ones, it just doesn't work. And my school,
Cô nghĩ rằng là
private
cái
independent
chuyện
school,
mà
recognize
học
that.
qua
And when we
mạng
go back
đối với lại
next
những
week,
người
they're
quá
sending
trẻ không
the
có
little
thực
ones
sự là
back
hữu
every
hiệu.
day, which I think is great. The middle and upper school ones will be back in a hybrid way every other day. And they've incorporated some choice too. So if parents are not comfortable, they'll be able to do a full online experience. But we're definitely going back as much as they'll let us. In terms of being a pediatrician, I just think the science is so clear that the risk of death or hospitalization for children with this virus is so, so low. But we know the risk of missing school are catastrophic. We probably don't even know how high they are yet, and they're
Cô nói đứng trong góc độ của một người bác sĩ thì cái khả năng lây nhiễm cho mấy đứa trẻ thì quá thấp, trong khi là cái khả năng mà gọi là ảnh hưởng tới những rất nhiều cái khía cạnh khác khi mà không có đi học và trở lại mà chỉ ở nhà thì lại quá cao.
Going back, even from a management standpoint from the school, every other day seems very strange.
I think the idea is they're going to take half the student body on A days and half the student body on B days. And so they can socially distance in the facility doing it that way. And then if you're at home, you'll be watching it on technology.
Cô nói tới một cái giải pháp là một nhóm thì đi vào ngày thứ nhất, một nhóm mà đi ngày thứ hai để thay đổi với nhau. Mà cái nhóm nào mà không đi vào trường thì ở nhà lúc đó cũng tham gia được với cái nhóm để mà giãn cách cái lớp học ra để mà nó có
following a decision that you and other parents in Seymour, Tennessee had to make with respect to whether to keep them at home and learn virtually or go back to school. You chose to go back to school. Why, and how is it going so far?
Well, the why is very easy. I'm a Hispanic small business owner, so I need my kids in school to run the business.
Đây là một cái người
I know a lot of families, it's a struggle if you're working your business and being teacher at the same time. It's just not easy. But we made that decision, and I really want to thank the leadership of Governor Bill Lee, who emphasized to the school districts to offer the options of in-person learning and virtual so that parents would have the freedom to choose which education route would be best for their child. The parents in my area and at our school decided to send our kids back. Our kids are excited. There is social distancing. There's a lot of protocols in place. Their temperatures are taken every morning. Everything is going very smooth. But what is really good is that my son and daughter, they understand the seriousness of the virus for those at risk. So they're keeping an eye out for those who are at risk so we can look after them. We have a group chat with the parents and we're communicating all the time if there's any symptom so that we know if something's happening or not, whether we send our kids back to school that day or not. And because the virtual class is happening at the same time, our kids will never fall behind.
That's great. Thank you very much. Well said.
Claudia Valladares, you are a kindergarten teacher at a public school, and we understand you had a very successful in-person summer school experience, which may be very surprising to some people here that actually was happening this summer. Can you tell us that from Lubbock, Texas, and also how does that portend for a successful in-person fall?
Yes, I'm from Lubbock, Texas, and I teach at Ramirez Elementary. And we did have a really successful summer school. There were no outbreaks. It was in person. There were precautions with social distancing, 6 feet apart. And children had to wear masks, 10 and older. There was temperatures taken for the staff and the students. And this year, our parents had the choice whether to do virtual or in person. And so far, we have 70% wanting to be in class. So we're ready to go and we
phụ huynh
start
có được
Monday.
quyền chọn ở nhà hay là cho tới trường học thì cho tới nay là ít nhất là
Thank you
70%
for all of
phụ huynh
your
cho con tới
leadership
trường học.
with this. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, you heard from a couple of our last speakers something that you actually have made happen in signing the CARES Act. There's about $13 billion worth of funding, and I was briefed by an HHS official this morning who said only 4% has been tapped into. They can use that to help them with the temperature checks, with the testing, however they wish to use it. So we would really implore those states and those local school districts to take advantage of the money that you and the Vice President, the Secretary, and others have already secured in a
Cô này đang
bipartisan
nhắc tới cái
fashion.
khoản tiền 13
What I'd like
tỷ
to do is I'd
đã
like
đặt
to
ra
see the
sẵn để
money
mà giúp
follow
cho
the
vấn đề
student.
an toàn trở lại
If a school is going to be closed and we're giving all of this money on the federal basis to a school, and if a student is going to go to a different school, really at the choice more of the parent, in all fairness, than the student, you know, where you want to go and what school you want to bring the student to. I think the money should follow the student. And
ông nói
that's
rằng là
something that we want to do. We're having a hard time with the Democrats. They want the money to
vấn đề
follow
tiền
the
thì
union.
cần phải cung cấp
To be
cho các
honest, it's very simple.
vấn
Give
đề
it
liên
to
quan
the
đến học
union.
sinh.
But the fact is, give it to dues, because the union people are fantastic people in there. But the people that run the union, it's disgraceful, and the dues that they charge the teachers, and that's what it's all about. So I would like the money to follow the student.
Ông muốn
And this way you can
tiền
make
bạc
your own
là
choice.
cái ngân
If the
sách
school is
sẽ
closed,
đưa
you know,
về phía
why are we
cho
paying?
học
If the
sinh.
school is closed, why are we paying the school? I'd rather give it to the student, the parents, and you do your own thing. And to me, it makes a lot of sense.
Secretary DeVos.
Well, and I would just add to that, Senator Tim Scott has a bill introduced in Congress that would do just that, would empower parents to make the choice for their children to find the right setting and the right fit for them, depending on their
Bà Bộ trưởng Giáo dục
circumstances.
này nổi tiếng ở cái kế hoạch của bà đấy là muốn cho tiền thẳng cho các học sinh, cho các phụ huynh học sinh để mà đưa tiền đó, rồi thì họ mới có quyền lựa chọn trường công nào mà để họ học, chứ không nhất thiết là phải rót ngân sách cho trường công rồi học sinh tới đó mà học thôi. Cho nên là cái kế hoạch của bà vẫn còn chưa có thành, nhưng mà đó là một cái kế hoạch có thể nói là cải tiến rất là lớn trong vấn đề giáo dục.
Opportunities, and I will say that we as a nation can philosophically and politically differ on many issues, but I've never ever heard a very compelling and persuasive, memorable reason why people oppose the kind of school choice that the two of you are fighting for. And school choice means parent choice. So our last set of questions really go to the parents and the importance of parents' ability to choose the right education for their children, particularly within this dual medical and financial pandemic. Mr. President, we have with us today, and I want to read it so I get it all right, Janie Neely of Columbia, South Carolina. She's a former public school teacher herself. She's a reading specialist. Her zone school district plans to provide full-time virtual instruction. She believes her high schooler will be fine, but her kindergartner has Down syndrome and must receive in-person instruction. Janie's husband, Chris, is here. He serves as the chairman of the President's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities. Thank you very much for being here, Chris, and God bless both of you and your children. Would you like to tell us a little bit, Janie, about how you're approaching this school year?
Absolutely. When schools closed in the spring abruptly, it was especially difficult for families with children that have special needs.
Bà nói rằng là cô này nói rằng là khi mà trường học đóng cửa vào mùa xuân vừa qua nó rất là khó khăn cho gia đình và trẻ con. Đặc biệt là cho những trẻ con có cần có nhu cầu đặc biệt.
And the structure and routine of school day is so critical for this population of students. It simply cannot be replicated in a virtual platform, and especially for a kindergartner with Down syndrome.
Hoạt động của trường là rất là quan trọng, không thể nào mà thay thế bằng qua cái học hành qua mạng được.
And it's been extremely disappointing because as a parent, I wish, well, I need and I wish that I'd been given a choice.
Bà nói rằng là một phụ huynh thì bà cần có và bà hy vọng có được cái sự lựa chọn cho chính bà để mà đưa con hoặc là không đưa con đến trường.
So my hope is that we can all work together to get in-person learning.
Tôi hy vọng là chúng ta sẽ cùng làm việc với nhau để có thể đưa cái kế hoạch cho học sinh học một cách trực tiếp tại trường học.
Really well said. So it's been a burden, a tremendous burden, and what you've been through has been a great burden, obviously.
Thật là một cái gánh nặng cho những gì mà bà đã trải qua vừa qua.
I think families with children with special needs were already carrying a pretty tremendous burden.
Tôi nghĩ rằng là những gia đình mà có trẻ con bị khuyết tật đó là đã có một cái gánh nặng rồi.
Unfortunately, in my situation, we've now been forced to change and to find another school option for our son.
Trong trường hợp gia đình tôi là phải đi kiếm một cái trường khác để mà có thể cho con tôi đi tới, tại vì cái trường đó, cái trường mà nó vẫn học thì bị đóng.
So there's not always that option. We're fortunate in that situation, but now my family's taking on the burden of not budgeting and planning for tuition. So having the dollars follow the student is very critical for a family like ours, and now I'm also having to plan all of his therapies on the outside. So we're talking about a kindergartner that's going to school from 8 in the morning till 2:30 in the afternoon, and then he has to have occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy all after school. That's a long day.
Ví dụ như là cái việc bình thường là cái đứa trẻ khuyết tật nó đã phải học từ 8 giờ đến 2 giờ, rồi sau đó là còn phải đi những cái trị liệu, vật lý trị liệu và trị liệu vân vân ở các cái trung tâm nữa.
Thank you. You know, I think the conversation in America right now, the children with special needs have really been left out. And so, Mr. President, I want to thank this administration,
trẻ khuyết tật, ông này đang nói đó.
Mr. Vice President, when you and the Secretary came to Columbia a few weeks ago, you addressed that issue, that people with disabilities are being left out. And so what we have here are people that are on the front lines in education that are saying we can open the schools for everyone. I visited 2 schools this week in South Carolina that have charter schools. Students are in class, teachers are there, they're learning, they're playing with each other. I mean, it's been a great experience. So we could do this in America. We can get America back to school and make our education system great.
Chúng ta có thể làm được cho trường học sinh hoạt trở lại.
Florida's Commissioner of Education, Mr. Corcoran, you spearheaded an emergency declaration with Governor DeSantis, basically to meet the demands of parents for in-person instruction. I'm very struck when I read these parent surveys in many districts. Parents overwhelmingly are saying yes when they are asked, do you feel it is safe for your son or daughter to return to school? And often they're being big-footed by a county health commissioner or a school board. How are you meeting that demand, and how do you know that parents are so in demand in Florida for in-person instruction? What are you hearing?
Well, we did exactly as you said. We did an emergency order that basically gave increased flexibility and increased choice to parents, teachers, and the districts, and a certainty in the funding. But if you're not, and what we were saying and what got reported the same day you said open school, so they said we colluded. I wish I colluded with you.
That sounds like a good idea.
They like that word.
But we opened up, we said you have to open up as an option 5 days a week for school children. And now in Florida, we're in August, our first schools are opening up this week. And throughout August, we'll have all 67 our districts will open up. We've not approved a single plan, to your point and your point, even in our phase 1 counties in southeast Florida. We've told them, you better open up for children with unique abilities on day 1. You cannot do virtual therapies. You can't do virtual, and we just had a forum the other day with another parent who had a Down's child, and he just thrives when he's around other kids, and when he's at home, he's literally being diagnosed with depression because he's not around kids. They have to have that right away. And so we'll open up, and the great news is we'll have probably, already we have 13 districts that open up this week. Of those 13 districts, this is the amazing thing, to your point, we are being sued by the union bosses, and they are disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. And so we have multiple suits going. But the reality is, of the districts that opened up this week, 6 of them have almost 100% teacher participation. You know what teachers want? Teachers want to be back in the classroom with their kids. Even if they have an underlying condition, they want to be back. And that's what we're seeing in Florida. And when we get to August 31st, all the districts open up, we're going to have probably 70 to 80% of students in face-to-face options, and we'll have more than that percentage in teachers in the classroom with their students. And there's just no substitute for it. You hear it. We have the largest virtual school in the country. It is a second-tier education. The best education is when you got a great teacher, a great mentor, someone who's got great wisdom, all the children and their peers together getting a great education. And an education, we say, is everything. Education is freedom. Education is the uplifting of the human soul to the glorious light of truth. And to deny a child that kind of education, you're robbing them of a lifetime, not just of earnings, a lifetime of who they are as human beings. And I stole that from Frederick Douglass, but that is really what education goes to. And that's what, I loved what the Royal Academy said when they said, you're scarring a generation of children for their futures. That's what we're doing when you don't have that option. But hey, if you're a parent, I have 6 children, 2 in elementary school, 1 in middle, 2 in high school, 1 in college, all public school. All of them are going back to school. But I completely respect and wanted to honor the decision of a parent who says, well, what about, I don't feel safe. I think the evidence is overwhelming. We've all seen it. But if you have that right. If you want to do distance learning, we're going to do the best possible way. But to the other 70, 80% of us, we have the right to go back and have our kids get that world-class education.
It is interesting because one thing we've learned during this horror show of the China plague is that virtual is not as good as being there. Virtual is just not the same thing. And, for a long time, we've been hearing how great it would be, how great it would be. Well, we've had the ultimate sample, right? Namely, the whole country practically, and it's not as good. We've also learned that telehealth is very good. Telehealth is up 3,500%. It's incredible. Can you imagine that 3,500 people can stay in their homes, their apartments, wherever they are, and they can not have to go to hospitals or doctors and everything else. That's been an incredible success. Who would have thought that's become tremendous and really has been good, but the virtual learning is not like being in a classroom. And we've learned that, I think, very strongly in almost all cases. People thought for a long time that would be the answer, but that's not the answer. The answer is an old-fashioned one, isn't it, huh? Thank you. Great job you're doing, Florida. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, our final guest is a mom in Fairfax County, Lindsay Ammon. She's one of the parents who said yes to the question, do you feel safe returning your children to school? And her older daughter will have in Fairfax County just 4 half-days of virtual instruction at her grade level and 1 day off. So Lindsay has decided to exercise her parent choice and do pod homeschooling. Can you tell us about that, please?
Yes, absolutely. That's all correct. Everything that everyone has already mentioned, we also had a very poor experience with virtual learning. The kindergarten age, I think, is very difficult, as everyone has already spoken about. But she also, it's important to note, was an absolute lover of learning in general. She is very bright, very eager to learn, and we really watched that all fade We watched her education deteriorate, and we also really saw her mental health suffer over the course of the spring. So we were, very eager to get her back into in-person learning, and we really felt very confident and comfortable with the precautions that were put in place by our
Cô này
district.
cũng nói tới vấn đề đang trông đợi
Originally, we were
cái người con
offered
của cô quay
2
trở lại
days
trường học
in
và
person,
cũng
3 days
rất là
virtual,
tin tưởng vào cái
and
chuyện
then
mà
that's actually
những
since
cái
changed over
quy
the
định về
last
vấn
few
đề an toàn
weeks,
cho học sinh
and
khi học sinh
we
quay trở lại trường
are
học.
now 100% virtual. Fortunate for us, we had already kind of gone a different route and set up a homeschool situation for her with a small group of parents in our community, and we're very grateful for that. That was certainly not an easy choice to make. It was an unexpected cost and something we hadn't planned for, but we felt like it was really, really important for her to be in a classroom setting.
Cô kết luận là cảm thấy rất là quan trọng cho con quay trở lại trường học,
very interesting.
quay lại lớp học.
I think most people do feel this way. Wouldn't you say so? I think most people feel this way. We have a man with us who's a great expert from Stanford. He's working with us. He's consulting with us. And he's going to be at our press conference in a little while at 5:30. But maybe Scott Atlas, Dr. Scott Atlas could say just a couple of words.
Ông nói tới ông
We're
tiến sĩ này là người từ đại học Stanford hay đâu.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. It's a great honor to be asked to help out in any way I can, and the event I thought was terrific. I want to thank everyone for participating, and sort of to reiterate the bottom line on this, as the President and Vice President and Secretary DeVos have said, which is we know that the risk of the disease is extremely low for children, even less than that of seasonal flu. We know that the harms of locking out the children from school are enormous. And we also know, as we all would agree, that educating America's children is right at the top of the list for our nation's priorities. So I thank the President and everyone here for acknowledging these truths and to get kids back to school safely.
Tôi cảm ơn ông Tổng thống đã xác minh rõ ràng về cái tình trạng này và có cái kế hoạch cho học sinh trở lại trường học như vậy.
We've been working with him very closely, all of the task force, all of the White House, and we've made a lot of progress. We've made tremendous progress. You see other countries are now blowing up in terms of the disease. You call it what you want. So many different names for the disease, whether it's China virus and some I won't get into because I just get myself in trouble every time I do.
Cái bệnh này quý vị muốn gọi sao thì gọi, nhưng mà giống như là China virus chẳng hạn là
So we will have a press conference in a little while. You'll be seeing the doctor, you'll be seeing a few of the people, and I'll be making a statement. And I think that'll start at about 5:30. I want to thank everybody very much for coming in and being with you. We're on your side, 100%. We're on your side. We'd like to also see football get going.
Xin cảm ơn mọi người đã tới đây và tôi coi là hoàn toàn đứng về cái phía của quý vị đó. Tôi cũng muốn coi như là cái cuộc tranh giải bóng bầu dục sẽ xảy ra.
To a large extent it's going to happen. They want to do it. I'll tell you who wants to do it are the players and the coaches. They want to do it. I spoke with Trevor Lawrence, the great quarterback, and he's very smart. He understood it very well. He said, hey, I'm a lot safer in the field than I am being out there. And he got it. He got it very quickly.
Nói tới một cái
Coach O,
người huấn luyện viên.
He's some coach at one. He's a great coach.
Có một cái
he feels his players just want to be out there.
So
we've spoken to a lot
là
of
ông
different
huấn luyện viên đó thấy ông còn an toàn khi mà ra sân cỏ, còn an toàn hơn là
we're opening up very strongly. If you look at retail sales numbers, car sale numbers, used car numbers, and
nhìn vào coi những con số như là bán lẻ hoặc là bán xe, nhất là bán xe cũ thì nó đang tăng rất nhiều. Chắc đang tranh thủ là quảng cáo những cái tình hình gọi là tích cực của
number of people ever hired during a 3-month period, so for the quarter. So I just want to thank everybody. We'll see you folks in a little while, and thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Cảm ơn mọi người. Cuộc họp báo chấm dứt. Nói chung là về liên quan tới cái vấn đề đưa học sinh trở lại trường học một cách an toàn. Tại vì không thể nào mà coi như là chờ đợi mãi mà không có cho trẻ con quay lại trường học. Trong thời gian đầu thì chưa biết gì cả, cho nên là mọi người đều phải ở nhà. Giờ đây thì biết nhiều rồi thì không thể đợi mãi mãi được, cho nên là phải tìm cách sống với nó mà thôi. Trẻ con đi học trở lại, nếu không thì sẽ ảnh hưởng tới chẳng những tới trẻ con mà còn ảnh hưởng tới gia đình người khác nữa, những người khác trong gia đình nữa. Bây giờ đây đã nói rất nhiều lần rồi, không còn là cái vấn đề lựa chọn giữa sức khỏe và kinh tế nữa. Tức là có nhiều người lý luận rằng là nếu mà không học lúc này thì sẽ học lúc khác. Bây giờ phải giữ cho cái mạng nó an toàn cho tới khi mà ra khỏi cái đại dịch. Nhưng mà đại dịch thì không biết bao giờ mà gọi là hoàn toàn khỏi được. Cho nên bây giờ không phải là chọn lựa giữa sức khỏe và kinh tế nữa, mà là giữa sức khỏe và sức khỏe. Khi mà người ta đem cái chuyện là trẻ con lây nhiễm thì ít, nhưng mà trẻ con mà ở nhà nó sẽ gây ra những nhiều cái chuyện khác liên quan tới sức khỏe, như là sức khỏe về tâm thần, sức khỏe về vấn đề nghiện ngập, rồi vấn đề gọi là lạm dụng hoặc là bạo lực gia đình vân vân mà không bị phát hiện vân vân. Hồi nãy đã có người nói tới có con số là thường thường là 1 trong 5, tức là 20% cái vụ bạo hành gia đình được phát hiện ra là nhờ mấy đứa nhỏ đi học vào trường thì cô giáo phát hiện ra báo cảnh sát. Còn nếu mà ở nhà thì sẽ không biết được để mà phát hiện ra những cái điều đó. Xin chào mọi người và xin hẹn gặp lại trong lần tường thuật tới.